All right, here we go. Moment of truth. Yes! Oh, just died. Why does that always happen? This is great news now. A couple starts, kind of learning a little bit. We're good, we're good. This is great, excellent. Well, I think I up, and my F25 X3 N55 is, I don't know, I think it's toast. Something's going on with it. I was on my way home and I over-revved it and it just shut down on me and now it won't start. So you try to start, press the button, and nothing happens. Like it's trying to turn the motor and the motor's not turning. So there's no crank, no start, no engine codes. So I don't know what's going on yet. So I'm gonna have to figure this out back at the garage. Car is right behind me, you can probably see it. They're towing it up my street because that's how close I was to home. But thank God I had AAA, it was made it really easy. So yeah, let's take a look at this and see if we can diagnose the root cause of why the car will no longer crank from my stupidity. All right, so now that it's back at home, safe and sound in the garage, I can start troubleshooting. What happens is you press the start button and it's like it's trying to start, but it doesn't even crank. So you can kind of hear the starter trying to crank as if the engine is not turning over. It's preventing it from turning over. So can I turn over the engine manually? Can I crank it by hand? That's the first thing we need to check. So the first thing is, okay, keys right here. Well, let's start. Okay. Let's try if maybe I can get the battery. Maybe I can get the battery plugged in. It says charge battery right there. So I take two, see? It tries, and it's not even turning the engine. Okay. All right, so I'm just getting started. I got the X3 on the lift, and now it's time just to start disassembling everything from underneath the car. And that includes all the cowlings, that includes the exhaust, and of course, the connection of the drive shaft with the differential, with the transmission rather, the 8 HP. And the reason that we're doing that is mainly because we're going to take this whole drivetrain and drop it down. That way we're going to have everything available to us, including the exhaust, everything else. We're not going to be doing it the front way, which has its own set of issues and variables because of the whole front clip, the condenser, the compressor, all that stuff is not really going to be that much of an issue if we drop everything down. So we're definitely going to need to do some work from above, but right now we're taking care of everything from underneath. And you can see here that we've gotten all the cowling out. This is quite a rusty underneath, but you know, it's definitely still worth saving because this is such a fun car to drive. So I disconnected the drive shaft here, and I got the car in neutral. I've got the transmission in neutral with the neutral safety switch here that needs to get screwed in. And basically what we're going to do is just take the whole subframe and drop it down. And it's still a lot that has to happen. The entire exhaust, which is connected here, there's this clamp that I had to remove. And I thought I can slip this off, but I can't. So I'm just going to do it while it's all on the ground. But the rest of this entire exhaust is loose and it's hanging very loosely here by one hanger, so it'll be very easy to remove. Part of removing and dropping the whole subframe is to make sure that the strut tower gets disassembled as well, and the brake line. So the brake line is connected to the caliper, and the caliper needs to be removed. So we're going to take the caliper, we're going to take it off. We're probably actually going to replace the brakes while we're at it. And that way, everything's going to drop at the same time, and the brake system is going to remain intact.
And the region faces an even greater threat.
Okay, so now that I've taken care of the axle-related things like the brake calipers and the ABS sensors and the brake pad wear sensor, it's time to take a look at the engine. Start removing things from up here. Now, there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be taking out from up above, including, and most importantly, the air conditioning compressor. We're not going to take it out. We are going to remove it from the engine and just let it sit there. That way we don't have to touch the condenser, and the entire AC system still remains closed even though we're replacing the actual engine. All the cowling probably will need to be removed. The strut bar up here will need to be removed. We have to remove the 3 bolts for the strut tower so that those fall when we raise the car up and leave the engine in place. There's still a lot more we got to do up here. So let's start working by draining the coolants, all of them. All right, a lot of work was put into getting this thing basically 100% ready. Everything underneath has been removed, including the axles. I've decided to leave the strut towers alone, which means I didn't really have to remove the brake calipers, but it's okay. I get to check the brakes pads anyway. Everything else here has been removed. All the electrical has been removed. I removed the 2 oil lines that go from the oil cooler mounted on top of or on the side of the radiator to the transmission. So that's now separated from the chassis. I've also removed the compressor. I did not remove it from the lines because then that would vent the R134A into the atmosphere, which is really bad for the environment and very irresponsible. So we did that. We've got all of our electrics removed. And let's not forget that one spot where the brake booster connects to the vacuum that is produced by the engine in order to generate a nice, easy brake pedal. That needs to be disconnected as well. Now we're at the point where we can raise this up just a tiny bit and start disconnecting the 6 bolts on the subframe that connect the chassis to the engine and bring the whole thing down. Oh, and of course, the transmission mount as well needs to be removed. Then the whole thing can come down as a succinct one-piece unit. Not to mention the PCV system, the fuel line, the sway bar links, and of course, the rest of the exhaust. Now we've got all that done, we can now drop the drivetrain, lift the car up, and hopefully it should be relatively smooth. All right, you can see we got the drivetrain out completely, and now it's time to start disassembling this because the block that I got actually doesn't have a lot of things like the accessories that I need to take from this engine and transplant it back to the other engine. Nothing was wrong with this engine except me blowing it up, and I don't know what happened yet, but we're gonna get to the bottom of that too. For now, we need to start removing all the things from the exhaust and figure out what type of O-rings and seals I'm gonna need to acquire when I put this turbo back on the new motors. As far as this side goes, a lot has to happen here. The alternator, the subframe has to be removed, the charge air intake, and I have to make sure that the DME is compatible with the wiring harness on the other engine. So we're gonna start working right into it and figure out what the problem is. All right, a lot of progress. As you can see, we removed the turbo. We're gonna be keeping the water pump because the water pump on this engine is a lot newer, a much better condition, no corrosion or anything like that. We took apart all of the intake tubing without destroying anything. And we started working on this side where we removed the intake manifold, which is important because the DME is attached to that. And we're gonna be installing that. Basically, there it is right there. That setup is gonna go on that engine. We removed the alternator and the bracket for it, and we need to get that installed here too. We took a look at the exhaust, the intake valves, and you really can't see them too well here, but they're no good. It's no good. So we gotta blast all these out. We gotta walnut blast this out. So that's okay, no big deal. We could do that, and it's all part of the preventative maintenance. And now we wanna start disassembling and disassociating this crap engine with everything else that we need to take off of it, including the 8 HP, and the subframe. Subframe's pretty easy. We have to remove the 8 HP through all the bolts in the bell housing. And of course, we have to disassemble the front drive shaft. After that, the whole engine should lift up and get out of there, and we can keep it as a salvage for other parts that we might need as we get the car running again. Guys, thanks a lot for watching part 1 of 2. In part 2, what we're gonna do is work through getting the engine reinstalled. We're gonna do that first crank, and then we're gonna iron out all the electrical gremlins that exist between the early model N55 and the late model N55. Guys, thanks a lot for watching. Stand by for part 2. You don't wanna miss it. Later.